Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get going with today's event here. Here's Jerry Norton.
First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody that helped put this event on, all the president-elects for Area 3. I wanted to say special thanks to them. I also want to thank all the past presidents that are here, the dignitaries, and then all of the veterans. That this is all about you, and we really appreciate it. So I'm going to ring the gavel and call the meeting to order.
All right, thank you, Jerry. You'll see a lot of Jerry here today as well. I just want to reiterate what Jerry had said too. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who has served, and thank you for being here today, and a warm welcome from all of us here today as we celebrate and really honor our heroes here today. Just a quick introduction. I'm Corey Heppola. I work for Jerry at the Brookshire Company. Some of you may remember I was a KARE 11 news anchor for 4 years and had my own show. Thank you. Yeah, all right. There's one in there. And had my own show on WCCO radio for 3 years, and very thankful. That was something I had dreamed about at 8 years old, getting to have the opportunity to serve our community in that way. So really appreciate you all welcoming me here today. Most importantly, though, I want to remind us all why we're here today. We live in the best country in the world, right? The United States is the best country in the world. We have the opportunity to work. We have the opportunity to love and to worship and to go to school. We have the opportunity to vote. We make a difference. And that is something that can't be said all across the world, but here, that's the reality, and that's the truth. And oftentimes we forget about that, right? We go about our daily lives, we look out at some of the division in politics, we look out at some of the issues in our community. But I think it's good to have the perspective of, we live in a wonderful community. We live in a wonderful state. And we live in the best country in the world. And that's why we're here. We are free. One regret that I have is that I never got a chance to really, as a mature adult, ask my grandfathers who served for this country. I never really got to ask them about their service time. Both of them passed, one when I was just freshman year in college, and then the other about 15 years ago. And yes, it wasn't really talked about much. I don't know that if they wanted to open up on any stories or not, but yet as a fully fledged adult now, I wish I had had that time to be able to just ask. Maybe even give them the platform if they wanted to share, or were looking for somebody to share, to be able to have those conversations, to see what it was like. My grandfather on my mother's side served in the Navy, and my grandfather on my father's side served in the Army. So with that in mind, as a storyteller myself, that's sort of a priority for us, is to continue to tell those stories so that they don't die with the next generations on the service and why we serve and why it's important, and ultimately why we do what we do. We can't let these stories die. So this is, that's my picture. But one of the things that we do here at the Brookshire Company is we tell community stories. And we help communities who maybe don't have a voice, but we help advocate for them, telling exactly why talented people choose to live in these communities, things that often get overlooked. And so we have a documentary series called My Town. And in season 1, we've got 2 seasons now, 15 episodes across 6 states, 15 different communities. But in season 1, we went up north. We went up to the Iron Range in Chisholm. And as we were filming there, we met a group of 3 guys who lead the Chisholm Beautification Association. So these guys are in their 80s and in their 90s, and they have, after their service time, have made a point to make a difference in their community. And what they've done is they've restored historical items around the county and around the community, but also just going around doing good deeds. These are my type of guys. Now, this is a story that doesn't often get told, but it's one that I thought was important and I thought was really pointed for today. These guys all served their country, and they took me down into the American Legion in Chisholm, and I want to play just a 1.5-minute video for you, and just, they were so excited to share the impact that their community has had for this country. Well, yeah, there's Operation Overlord Normandy, D-Day over there. This is the American Legion downtown. Dave Pacenda and Roger Johnson have lived in Chisholm for decades and are service veterans.
If you look at those frames right there, those are World War II veterans from Chisholm. Those names, all those names.
All of their, huh?
All 3 of them.
Jeez. Both Dave and Roger were a bit too young to serve in World War II. Roger's the guy in the blue hat. He's 95, looks amazing. Told me that he tried to enlist in World War II, but he was only 14 or 15 at the time, so they wouldn't take him. But both guys had brothers and cousins who did serve in World War II. Of course, this is a small town. Everyone had at least someone they loved over there, including Dave's uncle, Ed Turk.
His ship was sunk on Christmas Eve, 1944. It was missing 13 days, but he survived.
Survived?
Yeah.
Picked up by an Australian destroyer. Incredible. Both my grandfathers served too. One of them lost a brother. I wish I would have asked them more about it. Although I know for most vets it's hard to talk about. I mean, today we just accept the fact that the U.S. led the way to victory, but for those like Roger and Dave who were alive back in the 1940s, that outcome was not a certainty. You look around this room at the names and artifacts and memories, and you see Chisholm had an enormous impact through service and its mining industry. This area played a huge role in World War II, right?
Iron ore. For tanks, ships, anything, rifles, anything made of steel.
And those are the stories we can't let go past and be forgotten. The impact that our communities here in Minnesota and across this great land, what we have done to maintain our freedom here in this country. So incredible, and thank you to all the men and women who have served to protect our way of life, our values, and our freedom. We do have a great event here today. You can kind of see what's leading up here before lunch. And then we have lunch at about 12:20 here, so in about 10 minutes or so. But right now, Jerry, if you want to come back up, we do have the presentation of colors here to start, and then we'll get going with the Pledge of Allegiance on down to the national anthem here as well.
Okay, thanks, Corey. We're proud to have join us today the color guard from St. Thomas Academy. Thank you.
Detail, halt. About, face. Present, arms.
Join me when saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, arms. Right, face. Forward, arms. Detail, halt. Right, face.
Join me now in saying the four-way test of Rotary. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Post, colors. Present, arms. Order, arms. Post. Left face. Forward, arm.
I'm proud to also have join us Gary Marquardt, who's going to provide for us a bit of information and also do the invocation for us. So Gary, if you could join us, please.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here as a representative of the grateful nation of America and also as a past president of Minneapolis number 9, 2010 and 2011. I thought a lot about an invocation, and I remember a statement that my dad made on a letter home from Nuremberg, Germany, where he was at the end of the war. And he said, "It's hard to find any kind of evidence of God, maybe at the end." And he never talked much about the war, and he died at a young age at 65. I was drafted to go to Vietnam, and they said, "You have a duodenal ulcer, you're F4, and you can't be in the military." Had a wonderful life. I lived the American dream beyond anything I could imagine. And when I retired, I decided that after being to the funeral of a friend of mine's dad, who was a World War II vet, where they played a recording of taps, that I would learn to play taps and that this would be my calling. After a few years of doing that, I wrote a poem about it. And I'll, as an invocation, recite that poem for you. They won't tell you stories of battlefield glories, show medals they stashed in a drawer. Don't ask them what happened. Did you kill anybody? What was it like being in war? Don't make him recall his buddy named Paul, who was lost on the 5th of September. Don't make him re-see unspeakable things. Don't relight that smoldering ember. On this very last day, when the 3 volleys play and the grateful flag lays in our laps, goodbye we will say, shed a tear, and we'll pray, miss the sad, solemn echo of taps. Amen. I'd like to call your attention to the MIA table up front. Every VFW has an MIA table. It is in honor of those who cannot be here. Some gave all gave some. I will now play taps in honor of our veterans, one of whom is my grandson, who just graduated from boot camp at Fort Benning, Georgia. And those of you who are in the military know that every night at Lights Out, Taps plays, and he sends me a letter saying, "I hear you every night, Grandpa." And forgive me if I'm a little nervous. I'm usually used to playing in a graveyard with 30 people standing there.
we're going to start moving on into the program. I hope you enjoyed the lunch and conversation and communications that you've had with the fellow table mates. So we're going to move on, but I want to do one thing first before we step into the program, and that is I'd like to recognize each of the clubs of Area 3 that are here today. We believe we have representation for most of all the clubs. There's a couple we might not have anyone attending, but I want to recognize specifically the Bloomington Noon Club. If you could give a shout out if you're at Bloomington Noon. There we go. Then we got Eden Prairie, the Morning Club of Eden Prairie. They're awake. All right. Eden Prairie Noon. Back in the back corner, they're sitting in the reprobate area. So we've got Edina Morningside. Where do we got them? Over on my left. And we have anyone from the Veterans Club that are here too. So we've got a few of the Veterans Club. We welcome them. We also have South Metro Minneapolis Evening and the Pride Clubs, if anybody's from there. So we appreciate everybody being there. And then last but not least, the Edina Noon Rotary Club. This has been a great day and a great event to put together. I'm going to ask Corey Heppola to come back up and introduce our speaker here today, and look forward to hearing the presentation here. So welcome back, Corey.
Thank you, Jerry. Hopefully everybody had a good lunch here, and we're excited to introduce our featured speakers here today. Joe Bennick is the project director of Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund, that is MMAF. That's a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization that says thank you to Minnesota service members and their families with cash grants. For the last 15 years, he has been the sole employee for MMAF, responsible for everything: event planning, fundraising, and grant outreach to service members and veterans. Now, prior to serving as project director, he volunteered an intern for the organization for 3 years. Quite the story with Joe, too. MMAF has awarded nearly $13.6 million to over 20,000 service members since the organization's inception in 2005, including over $3 million to 540 Purple Heart recipients, $355,000 to families of Minnesotans killed in action, and nearly $10 million to Minnesotans who have served honorably. Joe has also served as a civilian board member for Minnesota Warriors Hockey and a civilian advisor for Minnesota Military and Veteran Exchange. He resides in Blaine, a wife, 3 sons, and remains active in hockey officiating and coaching in the Twin Cities. Joe, that's Joe Bennick. We also want to introduce and welcome Richard Schulte. Now, Richard Schulte is a business and technology professional with extensive experience in consulting and financial services. He currently serves in a thought leadership role at global consultancy KPMG, where he helps shape the firm's work on artificial intelligence and emerging AI technologies. Richard also served in the U.S. Army and the Minnesota National Guard, with deployments to the Gulf War, Bosnia, and Afghanistan. His military career spanned roles from armor crewman on the M1 series of tanks to civil affairs and psychological operations, where he guided strategic planning and advised senior leaders on complex operational challenges. He retired from the MNANG, the Minnesota National Guard, in 2019 after 27 years of service as a Sergeant First Class. He lives in Woodbury with his family, remains active in the community, combining his professional expertise and military service to continue serving others. So, with all that said, let's welcome Joe Bennick to the stage.
Want to say thank you to Jerry for allowing us to be here today. As Corey introduced, Joe Bennick, I'm the project director of Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund, long name. I was asked to speak today and initially said I'd be more than happy to, but I did not serve. And so being asked to speak at a Veterans Day event, I thought I need to have a veteran here with me. Rich is one of our board members and was gracious enough to join me today. So I want to give a round of applause to all of the veterans in the room, Rich especially, and so please just a round of applause to all the veterans in the room. Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund, our mission is actually pretty simple, and it is to say thank you to Minnesota service members and their families, and we do so by awarding cash grants. Corey ran through the numbers there. I'll run through those a little bit again as I go through the presentation here. But it really is about saying thank you to Minnesota service members. We were founded in 2005, and our lead founder was Mr. Eugene Sitt. Gene Sitt, longtime Edina resident. You guys are going to see that the city of Edina theme kind of resonates with people who have been involved with this organization. So Gene Sitt was good friends with Jack Vesey, the former chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. And going back to about the 2002-2003 time frame, there were lots of Minnesotans being sent to Iraq and Afghanistan. And Gene and Jack wanted to make sure that the experience of Minnesota veterans serving in Iraq and Afghanistan was different from those who had served in Vietnam. And I know there's a lot of Vietnam veterans in the room today. Thank you guys for your service. Gene Sitt and Jack Vesey brought in other Vietnam veterans. Denny Scholstad, one of them, another Edina name. And they came up with this concept of Minnesotans Military Appreciation Fund to say thank you and make sure that our service members were being appreciated. And that was really the impetus of the organization. So from ECS, from Mr. Sitt, the Sitt family, their beginning of the organization, the Sitt family has just been wonderful to the military, and it's really a tribute to their dad, who was the man that wanted to start this organization. As I said, there's an Edina flavor. I want to give a shout out to Mike Eckert, Rotary member here, and also one of our steering committee members. Denny Scholstad, Michael Gorman, Roger Sitt, those names, they're all Edina community members, and so it really made sense for us to be able to talk about MMAF today and the impact that we've had because of members of this community and their willingness to support veterans and veterans organizations. So going back to 2005, the organization publicly launched in August of 2005, so just over 20 years ago. And we needed to make a big splash, and there were connections between General Vesey and Senator John McCain. And so the first event that MMAF held was a fundraising dinner at the Minneapolis Hilton downtown. Senator McCain was the keynote speaker, and he came in to talk about his experiences to make sure that that veterans, again, were being served, that they were being supported. And he really set the tone by waiving any sort of speaking fees. He came in and did this gratis and helped raise a lot of money for the organization. I'll backtrack just a step here. When Mr. Sitt, when General Vesey were looking for donors to support that initial fundraising dinner, it was right around the time that Hurricane Katrina had hit, and so their doors were getting doors closed on them over and over and over again, and the Sitt family stepped up, made the first $1 million donation to the organization to get things off the ground, and so that led into that initial fundraising dinner. Since then, the annual dinner has been our biggest fundraising gala, and we've had great support from, as you can see, some pretty high-profile speakers. General Stanley McChrystal, Thomas Friedman, Tom Brokaw, Minnesota favorite Vince Flynn. And just recently, we welcomed one of Minnesota's highest-ranking service members, or recently retired service members, in General Michael Kurilla, Elk River native. You guys might have heard of the fact that the U.S. bombed Iranian nuclear facilities this summer. General Kurilla was the one in charge of that, and so having him 2 months after retirement was pretty amazing. Just a charismatic guy. It was fun to have him. Minnesota has had a disparate impact in leadership level within the U.S. military. General Votel, former commander of CENTCOM, General Kurilla, commander of CENTCOM. Also on there, General Paul Nakasone was commander of U.S. Cyber Command. He retired a couple of years ago. So at one point, 3 of the combatant commanders who are in charge of, they're the high-ups in the military. They were all from Minnesota, which is pretty remarkable. What we do, the types of grants, and really what we're about is serving Minnesota service members. We give $500 to anyone that has served honorably in a combat zone since September 11th, 2001. We give $2,000 to $10,000 to Purple Heart recipients, depending on the severity of their injuries, and then we give $5,000 to Gold Star families. Eligibility requirements, it's pretty simple. They have to, service members have to either have drilled in Minnesota as a member of a Minnesota Guard or Reserve unit, or have Minnesota as their state of residency. So basically you have to have boots on the ground in the state of Minnesota before you deploy, and then have a combat deployment, having received hostile fire pay or imminent danger pay. Many of you served in the military, as we can see in the room today. Paperwork is not something that the VA or other military organizations are known for being. There's a lot of bureaucracy with it. We are not like that, simple as that. We have a one-page grant application. It takes service members about 2 minutes to fill it out, and they submit it, either a DD-214 or an LES. So we try and make it as pain-free as possible in terms of the application. We process grants every other week. It's amazing. You'll get people that have called in and said, "Hey, I just sent you my application and I got a check a couple days later. How did you guys turn that around so fast?" And it's really a team of one. With some volunteers, we can turn it around pretty quick, and that's a good thing. So currently there's about 24,500 or just under Minnesotans that are serving in the armed forces. That's on active duty, reserve and guard components. And historically, since 2001, there have been about 40,000 Minnesotans that have served in a combat zone. And we've given grants to roughly 20,000 of them. And a little bit of the breakdown of the numbers here, as Corey had indicated earlier, if my memory serves me right, it's about 540 Purple Heart recipients to the tune of about $3.5 million, 71 Gold Star families, and that is $355,000, and then about 19,400 or just over service members who have served honorably, and that's to the tune of about $9.5 million. So we've had a pretty large impact on Minnesota service members, but we've also been very fortunate to have partnered with other good organizations. And as you can see, the breakdown, we've given grants to Minnesotans. Grant checks have gone out to over 800 municipalities in the state, and it's really been, we've sent grants all over the place. I've got a list back in the office of every little town or city that we've sent checks to, and anytime you see a small place that you don't recognize, I'm happy to check it off the list. Gene Sitt really wanted to make sure that our organization was a grassroots effort, and we've been fortunate to have many different groups throughout the state of Minnesota raise funds on our behalf. The Freedom Run down in Minnesota Lake, the Patriot Ride, bikers tend to have a tendency for patriotism, and so we've been very fortunate to have groups like that raise funds on our behalf, but also partner with the Twins, the Vikings, the Timberwolves. We've been really fortunate to be able to recognize MMAF grant recipients on the court, on the field. We're really lucky to have sports teams here in the Twin Cities that care about our veterans and have been willing to partner with us and other organizations. Just some quick images here of giving grants to our recipients. It's been a pleasure for me to be able to meet some of these great people. In terms of donations, we've had over 12,000 donations from about 6,100 unique donors, and again, that comes from all over the state of Minnesota. So in terms of Mr. Sitt and wanting to make sure that a grassroots effort was reached to have Minnesotans say thank you to Minnesotans, I think we're doing a pretty darn good job. Now I would like to introduce that grant recipient that decided he would come with me and share some of his story today, because I think Rich personifies what it is to serve in the state of Minnesota. He served 27 years, retired as a sergeant first class, is an MMAF grant recipient, and then decided that he wanted to help us out as a steering committee member. So please help me in introducing Sergeant Richard Schulte.
All right. So, as a former non-commissioned officer, I'm much more comfortable speaking without a microphone and being heard, and so this is a little different for me. There's some folks in the room chuckling over this. So first, as Joe said, I want to thank everybody for coming out this Veterans Day. We really appreciate the recognition of Veterans Day. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was underneath this concept of Veterans Day, we have this idea of sacrifice for our civil culture or our civil society. And I think each one of us signs up either wittingly or unwittingly to take on that responsibility. And so what I thought I would do is reflect on that concept and reflect on how my experience in some ways, which is I think unique as a non-commissioned officer and as a service member, was shaped and formed by the various military experiences I've had. And just by way of introduction, I grew up in Moorhead, small farming community, or was a small farming community when I lived there. My dad was an agronomist. My mother was a teacher and home daycare provider. My father would love to talk about the soil of the Red River Valley and how it was some of the best in the world. And as a young teenager, this was not something that I necessarily found all that interesting. But I appreciate their sort of raising me in a safe and thoughtful environment that allowed me to grow up without really very much concern about world events or any challenges that some folks grow up with. So first, I wanted to talk about my experience in Afghanistan. So I deployed to Afghanistan in 2011 and 2012 as an instructor advisor with the Counterinsurgency Center in Afghanistan. It was unique that Minnesota got to basically staff this organization, and we were chosen to do it. And so throughout the course of my deployment, I got a ground eye as well as strategic view in the approach to trying to solve the problems of insurgency in Afghanistan, which is probably a fairly challenging and unique perspective on what was going on there. I was responsible for 4 provinces in northeastern Afghanistan, basically doing all the training and advising, and we had a small 3-person team made up of myself, a civilian contractor, and an interpreter that would work with us. And we spent a lot of time working with the Afghan National Army and as well as coalition forces. So I lived on a German army base. I learned to speak German, or basic German. I spent a lot of time interacting and coaching and advising and learning as I was doing. But it's interesting to reflect on the roots of the insurgency in Afghanistan, and this all circles around a concept of instability. And this instability came about because of the Russian invasion in 1979. I was 9 years old when the Russians invaded. Just for perspective, I was a senior in high school when they left 10 years later. And so for 10 years, the Russians executed a very brutal occupation campaign in Afghanistan, and perhaps more brutal than they're doing in Ukraine right now, because no one was really paying attention. And then that led to many years of civil war because of the power vacuum left behind by the Russians. And that then led to the rise of the Taliban, and the rise of the Taliban led to Al-Qaeda, circling back to September 11th and why I was in Afghanistan in 2011 and 2012. And so you have this loop. But what I want to do is bring this home with a story. We would frequently present an Afghan history slideshow to the Afghans we worked with to show them what life was like in Afghanistan prior to the Soviet invasion. We had pictures and videos and things that we had collected. And it was interesting to have these conversations with them. And during one of these conversations, the Afghan battalion commander, a lieutenant colonel, stopped us in mid-presentation to relate to his staff what it was like growing up in Kabul prior to the Soviet invasion. And none of the people in the room had any idea, from a tactile standpoint, what the experience was like to live in a moderately stable society that hadn't been at war for 30 plus years. And so it's very hard to facilitate a conversation about developing stability in a place where people don't know what that practically means on a daily basis. And so part of the effort that we were trying to do was, solve large, complex problems like road projects and wells and other things, but also trying to coach and advise the Afghans in understanding there was a world beyond all this conflict. And that is a very hard thing to do. And at the center of this is the idea of instability, and insurgency feeds on instability. It's like a disease. It metastasizes and grows and takes over its host. And it's not a very good thing. I think we can all agree to that. And so as part of this, I think I got this ground eye view of like the problems of an insurgency, how it grows, how it comes about, and the ways to solve it. And you can establish local security through, force of arms, but you can't actually solve the underlying problems that lead to it. And so this leads me to my next slide, which is, really I think this idea of the American experiment that we're all a part of. And it's constantly ongoing, and whenever we use this phrase, we tend to use it in the past tense, as if the experiment has been resolved, and we're sort of living in the result of that experiment, but rather what we need to think about is that experiment is constantly ongoing, and we're still in the process of experimenting. And it's a wonderful experiment in the sense of true self-governance. And what was interesting about this too, from my experience standpoint, was our counterinsurgency effort was fascinatingly centered on developing local stability that had no ideological perspective. We just wanted to give people civil security so they could live their lives the way we do, to some extent, without any influence of having to get approval from an authority. Yes, there were a lot of corruptions in Afghanistan, or trying to abide by a particular ideology, or any of these other things. And so it's unique in this that our means by which we thought of trying to solve the problem of insurgency was a uniquely American approach to this, in the sense of it wasn't about just establishing a system and forcing it upon everybody and making them abide by a particular ideology, but rather setting a set of behaviors and norms and cultural kind of ideas that they could then, as long as they behave that way, kind of do what they wanted, which is a great idea. At least I thought it was. Which is probably uniquely American. As an aside, I had a chance to spend I gotta watch the time, but I had a chance to spend a bunch of time with the Belgian, German, Dutch Army, and I had a fascinating conversation with one of the Germans I was working with. As we were doing a mission to train the Afghans, this German captain and I started talking about our grandparents and what they did during World War II. His grandfather had been on a German Panzer in the Eastern Front and never came home, but had lost, had 5 tanks shot out from under him over the course of the war, and then never made it home. And my grandparents were both in protected industrial jobs that they couldn't get drafted. So my grandfather on my mom's side was ran a machinist organization as a senior supervisor, and my grandfather actually owned a poultry company. And so both of those were protected jobs. What was interesting about this was our reflecting on the fact that here we are in Afghanistan, two former foes, basically working together to try and facilitate some concept of a normal civil society with this group of people, which was, I thought, really special. And so, you know, underneath all of this is like a set of values about what civic behavior means that I think are really important to understand and continue to sort of invest in. And that brings us to sort of this idea of service. You know, service is the way that I learned about this throughout my life, from when I was in high school as a young person attending YMCA Camp Minojan in the Boundary Waters. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. All right, so wonderful, beautiful experience as a young person to be challenged with, you know, sending, I mean, I can't believe they do what they do. They take a group of teenagers and send them out in the woods for extended periods of time. My last trip was over 30 days up in Canada. And it was just a bunch of teenagers, and we're, you know, canoeing all over, and this is before cell phones, before GPS, whatever, and we did it, and they trusted us to go do it. So all of these, you know, skills of self-resilience and learning to work on a team and problem solving and blah, 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 I learned from that experience and probably joined the Army to some extent because I was like, hey, this is really cool, I want to do more of this. And so I think that idea of service was rooted initially in that experience and exposure to working with others at a place like Minojan, and then throughout my military experience. It's interesting from the standpoint of acting as an agent of the U.S. government in foreign countries with the concepts that they bring to us about expectations about what it means to be an American, versus my personal feeling, but always reflecting on, you know, the opportunity I had to sort of explore these things and deal with these challenges. And at the same time, I'm thinking, you know, there's a guy inside of this uniform, not just a robot. And I think anybody that's served understands the experience of being in the uniform and what others expect and understand that uniform means. And then you're inside of it trying to make sense of what that experience is all about. And underneath this for me was probably, I was a political science student in college. And so when I got a chance to go to Afghanistan and study something like an insurgency, it was a profound opportunity to think about Rousseau and Machiavelli and de Tocqueville and other writers that I'd read, and now I'm seeing one play out in real life and trying to, you know, coach and advise and solve these problems. So it was really fascinating. So underneath this is kind of this idea of service and the exposure to these experiences that leads you to think about the common good more than simply my own benefit. And how do I exercise my agency, both as an individual and as a representative of the government, for developing and growing something like civil society, which I think is beneficial to everybody. And so last but not least, why MMAF? I think for me personally, you know, it's such a unique, it's a unique organization in the country. Nobody does this. There is not another organization in the whole United States that recognizes soldiers in the same way that we do. And so it's special. It's and it's sort of living what we could call Minnesota values. Neighbor helping neighbor, which I think is a truly Minnesota thing. Like, we help each other out. It's just what we do. It's part of who we are. And so the MMAF is special in this way, and I think important in the sense of when I was demobilizing from Afghanistan, we were going through a series of demobilization briefs. You know, they're rather dull. You have to sit through them. Sometimes they're interesting, more often than not. But because of the tempo of operations and whatever, we were conducting our demo briefs in a church. And so between sessions, I wandered through the back of the church, and there were some postings on the wall, and I was thinking and reflecting on this. And my deployment to Afghanistan was incredibly personally challenging because I got to see from the tactical level what was going wrong and what wasn't working and what we weren't able to accomplish, and then see at the strategic level some of the decisions that were being made, and to some extent reflecting on feelings like, hey, these were kind of people's personal decisions that didn't really reflect the needs on the ground. And it left me with a lot of deep personal, I don't know if angst is the right word, but complexity and emotion, because I was absolutely passionately committed to trying to solve the problems that we had seen, and we weren't really doing very well. And so as I was reflecting on this, I reflected on the experience of Vietnam veterans, and I thought to myself, I'm so happy that I don't have to go through all of this and then have people hate me for what I was doing, because I care about what I'm doing. It means something. It's good. It's not bad. And so it was meaningful to me to think that there was a group of people, that people had thought about wanting to do something that was nonpartisan to thank our veterans, to support them and what they do, regardless of what the administration is, regardless of what the political context is. And so at least I could take that off the list of sort of things I was thinking through, because I didn't have to deal with the facing any animosity from those around me. So I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to listen to me. Hopefully this was moderately interesting. I see some smiling faces. And just reflect on, I think it's just important to reflect on this sort of set of connected things, which is, our civil behavior or our civil society sometimes could be at risk without us even knowing it. And it's really important to kind of like continue to reinvest in those behaviors that are actually beneficial to growing a healthy civil society. And that comes through service, which I think you guys all understand, and that there's sort of this three-legged stool of civil behavior, service, and then, thinking about how we can recognize or reinforce in a feedback loop the growing our civil society. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time today.
And thank you to Rich for your words, and to Joe too for your work, guys. So thank you for being here today and sharing the work, and Rich sharing your experience too. And I can tell you're a military man because you're on time. You're right on time, right on schedule for the event. At this time we've got just a few minutes left here this afternoon. But we'd like to take a moment to recognize all those in the room who have served or are currently serving. And our Rotary Brass Quintet is going to play the branch music. And as they go, if you'd be willing to stand up and be recognized, that would be wonderful.
We will finish with Space Force.
Okay, finish with Space Force. Let's keep it going one last time for the Rotary Brass Quintet. Also, lots of thank yous to go around today. Thank you to the St. Thomas Color Guard. They'll be coming back up here in a minute. Thank you to Gary Marquardt, too, for the invocation and the bugle taps. We'll see Gary again. Yes, applause for Gary, please. Our featured speakers, Joe Bennick and Rich Schulte. Thank you to Area 3 Rotary Club sponsoring this event. And the Area 3 Rotary President-elects for organizing the event. And of course, one more for the veterans who are currently serving and or have served as well. And now, time for the retirement of the colors.
Arc flag, march. Detail, halt. Right face. Post. Retrieve colors. Post. Left face. Forward, march.
With that, we close this meeting, and we want to thank you, each of the veterans, for showing up and being a part and doing your part for this country, for us to have the freedom that we do have. With that being said, I want to say, meeting adjourned.